So then we are back with more understanding from the time of the second tabernacle services, where we are studying then from the Aramaic English translation of the word. And this translation comes from the original manuscripts of then the Israelic lineage, where we find then mostly Yeshayahu, the 61st chapter, where we find then the restoration and reduction of time, combined with what the Messiah said in Yeshayahu. Then the Levite would be then the second understanding of the time of the completion of the spring feast, most importantly being Yohanan the first. So then, from the viewpoint of the Messiah and what he taught, he said, whatsoever Moses told you to do and observe, these do and observe. Lots of folklore came later, a lot of junkies, and let's try to find out what's going on then with the situation of the 40 years of the desert situation regarding then the Israelic lineage. As we understand, there was no wandering for 40 years in the desert. 40 years of the desert experience was the time that it had taken to get the establishment of the first tabernacle service. It's plain and simple and direct. There is no other understanding. It had taken 40 years to make sure that the people would have the experience of the first tabernacle service. There is no wandering around because the anger of the Creator. But let's find out. Let's find out from the scripture, because then we take away these lazy teachers of the scripture that they don't want to be tabernacling the proper way the Messiah told them to tabernacle with. As they understand, there is no third temple coming up. So then, we find a section of it, the 34th verse of Numbers. Then we find the chapter is stating, then because of the fornication of the people and so on and so forth, by the number of the days that you spied out the land, 40 days, a day for a year. What is this? There is no indication of Yom Day regarding this section. So quite honestly, I have no idea how the Israelites have come up with this understanding. Maybe of their own, takanot masim, junk of their own. Are you saying then the Creator does not know how to make an evaluation of the land in a few days? As a military leader as he is, he doesn't know how to take care of spying the land in a few days? Why did it have to be taking 40 years? But then 34th, lots of Hebrew jargon mixed with it, because of fornication, so on and so forth. And then a year for a day, and days for the land. It doesn't make any sense. The translation is wrong. First, we are reading Aramaic, not Hebrew. Second, there is no situation of Yom Day related with spying the land. There were only a few days over there to spy out the land, and then the 40 years experience was the establishment of the first tabernacle service. What went on was then people came out of Egypt, those who were enlightened, those who were told by Pharaoh, because then Pharaoh felt the presence of the Creator, and he saw in his dreams. That's what made Moshe then the prophet. He came before Pharaoh and said, are you going to let the people go? Then Pharaoh said, why? Because they must serve the Creator in a desert. No, this night you're going to have this vision while in your dream. Then Pharaoh said, get away from my court. So he did, but then Aaron and Moshe, both of them were under guard. Don't think they were wandering around in the land making up and mesmerizing the minds of the people. Oh, can be sure he didn't. Then the next day, Pharaoh woke up. He had precisely the dream, and he had the vision what Moshe had told him the day previous. So then Moshe was then contacted. He would stand before Pharaoh, and what is this, Moses? You said you would have these specific vision in my dream, and it did. Are you going to let people go? No. This night you're going to have this vision in your dream. And so on and so forth until the 10th. That's how then you explained then Egypt then was mustering an army to go after them. How can you explain Egypt being destroyed if in fact went on and then mustering an army afterwards? Stupidity. Those were simply dreams. So then, afterwards they came out of Egypt. Did they find then the sea? Stretch out your hand. No, those are practices done by the soothsayers, those diviners, spiritualists of the time. They used to stretch out their hands to show power. When Moshe came to the sea, it was already retrieved. They went straight through. In situation of the column of fire coming down from heaven, how can the presence of the Creator be mixed up in a contaminated world prior of the understanding of the tabernacle? And then spying the land 40 years. Spying the land for 40 years. Is the Creator then stupid? Does he know how to do the job in a few days? But then they placed 40 years. 40 years was the time of the establishment of the first tabernacle service and its practices and training prior of going to the promised land. So then we understand when people came out of Egypt, then after the last dream of Pharaoh, when he saw the last understanding of the vision in his dream, then he was afraid. What simply he told Moshe was, go amongst the people and say what you have said. Those enlightened go with you, those not stay behind. So he went and he was under guard. You don't go in somebody else's country where you have slaves that barely cost you. And then you find yourself then placing on the line the very labor where your country then is benefiting from. No, you don't let the person going over there wandering around and speaking junk. Moshe and Aaron, they were under guard. You speak with them what you spoke, and they were very focused in what he was saying. Those enlightened went with him. Those did not believe it, stay behind. So then, those who went with him, he came up to a certain point of the journey where then the people coming out of Egypt, they had to believe what Moshe had said. They didn't have any visions. The people themselves, they had no dreams, no visions of any kind. Only those enlightened were saved. Enlightenment means when you hear the truth of the word of the Creator, then you understand and you read His word. And the guards were there with him. So then those who were enlightened, they were on the side over there and they went out. But then later, part of this group cursed then Moshe at his face, and then they went back. That's when they got lost in the desert and they died. It was very quick. No water in the desert, it's very deadly. What is the story of the shoes then sandals never were worn out? What is this? Did the Creator become then mysticist? Why would he then have their sandals not worn out? What were the stones? The stones over there, there are more than thousands of stones over there in the land, where during the time of their experience in the desert. Did not the Creator say, any place where your souls then tread would give him and them, speaking of the priest leading then the nation and then the people from the Euphrates to the Nile? So during the time of the experience of the training of the 40 years of the first tabernacle service, then they were working around in those stones. Because there were no documentation that they could say, oh, the Creator gave us this land, so therefore signed such and such from the Creator to us. Was there a department over there they could knock and, get the document? No, they had the stones. So they were in the desert over there and they chiseled the symbol of the sandals. Those were then the title of the land. Obviously those would never wear away, would it? But then people mesmerized, oh, they were walking around in the desert for 40 years, makes no sense, and then the shoes never wore out. Stupid. Then we understand it. Translation makes no sense. Even in Aramaic, from Hebrew, makes no sense. These Hebrews are crazy. They begin to translate, and then for some reason they make a day of a regular spying of the land. 40 years to spy the land? No, 40 years of training in the desert of the first tabernacle service. Thus the first menorah. So then the whole Hebrew writing is wrong. They made it up stories. We have to treat the Creator as a person. He's a military leader and he knows what he does. So as we then go on with our quest of time of restoration and reduction, then we have to clean up this junk from the instructions, because this is purely ridiculous. There is absolutely nothing holy regarding this scripture. Stupidity. So please stay tuned, much more coming up.